Yes, hello folks, welcome to Be on the Pitch on this Monday morning after a fantastic weekend of football in La Liga, the Premier League, Bundesliga. Of course, joined here as always with the fantastic Ian Joy. And Ian served us over Thanksgiving with that terrific coverage of the Bundesliga, Europa League, Champions League, Premier or Bundesliga. Yeah, you're working non-stopper, my man, while I was.
Every league.
Yeah, well, I was down in the Stellas and enjoying watching your show. I think I get about 2 or 3 days a year where I actually get to have a beer in the house. It's Thanksgiving is one of them. So,
There's
thank.
probably only 3 days a year where you actually get to enjoy a day without me on television as well. So that's not bad. And that was great. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone who enjoyed it.
Yes,
It was a fantastic week, and the coverage that we got from the Champions League last week, and then also the Europa League on Thanksgiving was quite incredible. So great to work Thanksgiving. I always enjoy it. Every time I go into Fox Studios, they've got these big turkeys and pies all waiting around for the NFL guys, and us small soccer guys have got to sneak in there, grab a piece of turkey, and run. It's brilliant. We love it.
it's funny. You are what you eat, and you end up becoming one as you do the coverage. Bada bang. So, but you brought United luck, which I will give you credit. 4-0 against Farnoid. So much to get through today, mate. Of course, another action-packed weekend with what's going on in the Bundesliga. I want to get into that. Big
Yep.
question marks around the Carlo Ancelotti,
Yep.
which seem a bit ridiculous, but they're very real nonetheless. Other question marks, Luis Enrique, Barcelona. What is going on there? The Anahueta curse continues to haunt them. And then, of course, the other big name manager, which seems to be cracking up, is Jose Mourinho and what's going on at Manchester United, because this looks like it's going to be the death of that poor man. But before we move into our everything else, Ian, I want to give a very special shout out because journalism doesn't always get the credit it deserves.
Yep.
And in the world of journalism, there are a few individuals that are truly, truly, truly exceptional. And Danny Taylor from The Guardian is one of the finest journalists you will ever come across. An absolutely magnificent journalist, a giant, and a tremendous human being, has once again broken a story that is heartbreaking, incredibly important, lifted the lid on something that, when you look at the guys involved, mate, absolutely heartbreaking, but huge credit to Danny for
Yeah.
bringing it out.
Yeah, quite incredible what we're seeing in the United Kingdom right now with the sex abuse scandals breaking left, right, and centre. I mean, it's something that's very close to my heart when it comes to abuse in youth soccer. I witnessed it firsthand with some of the treatment of my friends, my teammates coming through youth ranks at Tranmere Rovers. And obviously, I've seen it throughout the league. I heard the rumours before about Crew Alexandra and Dario Gradi. Obviously, I'm not pointing fingers and making accusations because I just don't know. It was all rumours. But yeah, Crew Alexandra always seemed to have that bad reputation as being a club that had issues with the way they treated their kids, and there was stories going around. The rumours were always there about Crew Alexandra. So that was back in the day, and that was 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and the stories continue to haunt everyone. And what we're seeing right now in the UK is really incredible. People are coming out of their shell and being able to talk about it, which is great. It's very important. And this is important for the youth game going forward, because we don't want to see youth kids getting, abused sexually or mentally. This has to stop. But what I feel is going to happen, Phil, is that this has opened up the door for so many more stories. We have not heard the end of this. There'll be sex abuse, there'll be mental abuse, there'll be physical abuse, there'll be a lot coming out of football clubs. And what worries me most about it is that for some way, somehow, clubs have been hiding these stories from breaking before. That's what worries me the most about it. Money's been paid to newspapers or to individuals to keep their stories in-house. And that's something that just can't happen in our beautiful game. And I hope that more people step forward and come out of their shell, talk about these stories, get it off their chest, because some of the abuse and the stories we've heard, Phil, have been quite frightening.
You know what's really disappointing to me, Ian, is that the FA are relying on Crew Alexandra to investigate themselves on this. Why? In a, we know there obviously was a culture at that
Yeah.
time of pedophilia being tolerated. When we look at obviously Jimmy Savile on the BBC's clearly cover up of what happened, we look at what happened with the Rochdale MPs. We looked
Yeah.
at widespread issues amongst life at this time, and we saw it's amazing, even in the US with Bill Cosby, obviously not sex abuse, but or child abuse, but sex abuse nonetheless. And there was clearly a culture at that time. Do you feel that the FA will do enough to expose this? Because if you're right that there has been from the clubs a willingness and an attempt to pervert the course of justice by covering this up.
Yeah.
How deep down the rabbit hole do they want to go?
I'm not sure that the FA knew too much about the stories. I think it's more in-house within the clubs, within their own system. They know their coaches, they know some of the stories. I'm sure parents have come to the club themselves. I'm pretty sure the police has been involved in this. We've already heard that the police has been approached by this before and done nothing about it. So they have a lot to answer for. I think that what actually happens is you will find that the finger is pointed at the clubs. The PFA, the Players Union, obviously have already stepped forward and said they will stand by and support in any way possible their players and former players, which is great to hear. They were a big part of my youth development coming through. My own story, watching some of my teammates being abused physically and mentally being abused at the youth ranks. And we're talking only 20 years ago. It's not that long ago. Right. And then eventually myself, I had to have the Players Union help me get out of my contract after my own coach threatened to break my leg in a training session. These things happen and it gets worse. My situation was very small considering what the stories we're hearing right now coming out of the UK. So the union have to step in and help the players, which they are doing right now, which is great to see. I'm not sure the Premier League knows much about this or the FA knows much about this. If they do, they're in big trouble because there's a lot of stories coming out. More and more people are coming out. And I'm intrigued to see what else comes out because I know this is not the end of it, Phil. And I'm actually happy that it's coming out now. I've been through a mental health issue myself throughout my career with injuries and obviously personal life, what's going on behind the scenes. I can't even begin to imagine what some of these people have gone through mentally at their own homes, with their own families, situations, whether it's suicidal thoughts or whether it's self-damaging thoughts through mental health. That's a show that we look forward to doing eventually and hopefully having some guests on and some close friends of ours in the beautiful game that have suffered through mental health because it is really a show of its own. But what we're seeing right now is just the start. There's more to come and it really is scary for me.
It's absolutely imperative that an environment is created, whether you're a footballer, whether you're just an average Joe, whatever, that it is okay to come forward. There's no stigma. It's never your fault. There's resources out there. If anybody who's listening to this has suffered in any way, it's imperative that you have the courage to come forward. And as a society, we always believe you be given that support, and I can't imagine, like you say, Ian, how anybody would tolerate and live with something that must physically and mentally tear people apart. You listen to some of these individuals and they talk about how they've turned to alcohol, turned to drugs, and what I will say, many people who deal with substance abuse issues or mask and self-medicating incredible emotional pain. It's not some moral failing. It's usually somebody dealing with incredible internalized pain. And so hopefully with the society we have here, I mean, we saw it here with the Jerry Sandusky case. We have resources available to young people or whatever age you are, that you come out and get support. And as we've seen here, there's safety in numbers. One guy comes forward, somebody else comes forward, then somebody else comes forward.
Yeah,
and
they have support.
Yeah. So, hopefully other people who have suffered see this and realize that, because let's be honest, Ian, nobody fabricates this stuff. Right?
No.
I mean, this is this is why it's imperative their beliefs, first of all. And I can't imagine the mental anguish and trauma that these people go through. So I spoke to Danny Taylor this morning about this. His words to me were, there's a lot more to come. So it's going to be really, really interesting to see what is going to happen over this and what else is going to come out. Just absolutely heartbreaking to think. I mean, you've been in that situation.
Yeah.
How vulnerable young kids are at 16, 14, 15, 16, and wanting to be a big star and being the fear of being released. I mean, it's a very vulnerable situation.
Listen, Phil, I've got a great story for you, and hopefully one day when we do talk about mental health and mental issues in the football, we will get an opportunity to interview this guy. But a friend of mine, Perry Taylor, he was an England schoolboy international from Birkenhead, just a wonderful footballer. I mean, he could have signed for any of the Premier League clubs. He could have gone to any team he wanted to. He was that good. He basically chose to stay at Tranmere Rovers because it was home. It was his team. He knew he would have an opportunity to get into the first team because he was a good enough player to play in the first team, and his development was coming along great at 15 years old. So he signed a professional contract, the same with me, at Tranmere Rovers. And then from day one, when John Aldridge took over Tranmere Rovers, I watched this guy getting abused from the first team, from John Aldridge, from his coaching staff, about his weight. He was carrying excess weight. And obviously there was some sort of jealousy there with Aldridge and this kid. It just got so far, so beyond belief, the way they talked to this kid. I'm not sure whether they wanted him to be a footballer. That's how bad it got. I thought it was just pure bullying that they treated this kid. And I watched him going from being one of the best youth players and youth products with a great future in his hands to being a shadow and someone who just had no confidence, who didn't want to play the game anymore, couldn't come into training at times because he was so depressed. And eventually at 18, 19 years old, he tried to take his own life. And that's how bad it got. And it is all down to the blame of the coaches, the people who are in charge of these youth players. And this is what bugs me the most about it, Phil, is that there are coaches out there who have been involved in situations like this, who have seen things like this and not said anything. Yep. And that's what annoys me. They're trusted to look after these youth players, to give them love, to give them a great opportunity and progress to becoming gentlemen, to becoming adults, and give them the best possible opportunity at being the best possible player that they can be. Give them the tools. To take their innocence away from them is certainly not in the script, and it's something that just completely embarrasses me that I sat back and watched it for a while until I did say something about it. But it embarrasses me so much that so many people don't say anything about it. They sit back and they watch and they mind their own business. And it is a frightening thought to sit back and listen to some of these stories that are coming out right now. And I feel for all the coaches who are involved in football right now, because there's so many of them who are just brilliant coaches who have got all the best interests of these kids at heart, want to develop because that's their passion for developing football players, boys or girls, no matter what sex they are, and help them become great people and great individual players. And these are the people who are suffering right now because they are now being looked at in a different frame of light, and that's scary.
And two really important things you said there, Ian, before we close this. Many people on the outside will ask, how could people just sit and watch this happen? And you'll notice that whenever these events happen, there is this willful ignorance. There's people turning the other cheek. Happens all the time. And, everyone has so much at stake. People are afraid to speak up. And then the other point that really needs to be made. If you're a coach to a young guy or a young girl, you are a giant in that individual's life. You are one of the top 5 most important people in that child's life.
Great point.
And how you talk to those kids, how you communicate, you are not just teaching them the game. You are teaching them to be a human being. You're teaching them respect. You're teaching them how to communicate. You're teaching them how to integrate with other human beings, how to work together. You're teaching them attributes well beyond their first touch. 99.9% of these kids will not make it as a professional, but you have a responsibility to that child to make sure that when they leave you, they leave better people. And if you're teaching them bad habits, if you're teaching them negativity, then you're feeling in your primary responsibility as a coach, because you're not just a football coach, you're a life coach. And I think the coaches must understand how relevant that is and how important they are. So, as you said, Ian, that's a show in itself. We'll get into this a little deeper when we're going to have professionals on to talk about this. It's a show. It's a show we're putting together. We're excited about doing because we feel it's really, 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 really important. And mental health is a buzzword, but very rarely is it given its due place. We're very, very rarely does it get its.
Nobody talks about it, Phil. That's the biggest fear for me, that nobody have talked about it for a while. I've lived through this in my career, and even now I've reached out to leagues and organizations and not had any response from a lot of these people, and that's what frightens me most about it. So I look forward to doing this show, and I know that we've already got a list that's already an arm's length of names of people who have suffered.
Yeah, absolutely. And huge kudos to those people that have come out and spoke out and had the courage to come forward, because that is what gives other people the courage, and it's crucial for us to learn so much more about it. All right, mate, let's move on. I'm going to start in La Liga, because big goings on this weekend, of course. Barcelona, the curse of the Anoeta, 9 years without winning there. Luis Enrique said, "We've been outclassed for the first time in my tenure. Worst start since Rijkaard." Final point, Mr. Neymar is in serious trouble. The Spanish government are pushing for a prison sentence, and they're confident they can get it. Bartomeu is also in serious trouble, or not Bartomeu, sorry. Previous Barcelona president, his name escapes me. I can't remember why I can't remember. But Sandro Rosell. Sandro Rosell is also in big trouble for the clearly financial doping of the Neymar transfer. So he crashed his car right before the game. I would imagine this young lad is facing tremendous mental anguish. They also want to imprison his father. And so maybe Barcelona wheels coming off a bit.
You know, things are not quite right at Barcelona right now. We can clearly see that with the performances, with the results. I was very surprised, even with the performance in Glasgow last week in the Champions League. That surprised me. I thought there would be a lot more goals coming from that game, even though they convincingly won 2-0. For me, the club behind the scenes, what goes on, the transfer embargo, obviously the situation with Neymar, with Messi, also having issues with tax abuse in his own country. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes of these clubs with so much money at stake now. It's quite frightening. The people in charge of these clubs have to be straight batters. They have to be on top of their game to make sure that they're avoiding these issues. Of course, people want to try and save as much money as they can. They want to try and save on taxes. Sure. They want to try and save on whatever they possibly can to make sure that the pennies are saved in their bank. And I don't blame them for that. People as individuals, we all want to save as much money as we can. And when you're talking multi-million-dollar deals, we're talking big bucks that they're trying to save here.
Yeah, but, Ian, when you're talking about a country if you're not 20% unemployment and these people are skint and they're watching these multi-million-pound footballers evading taxes, that's a bit hard to take.
Sometimes the footballers and the individuals themselves are not the people who are in charge of even their own finances. They may be the yes men at the end of the day, but you have a financial manager when you're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars, which is what Neymar and Messi and Ronaldo and all these big stars are doing. They don't necessarily are the ones who are making these decisions. It's coming from their families. It's coming from their financial advisors. Yes, I'm sure they are the yes men at the end of the day that the finger will be pointed to. But as far as the Barcelona situation you're talking about, it's interesting to me because Barcelona, Real Madrid, the big clubs in the world, those are two of the biggest. They always seem to find a way to get themselves into trouble when it comes to transfers and getting the best players and how they do it. So there's dodgy business that goes on. The Premier League, for me, seems to be the cleanest ones about doing their transfer business. They don't seem to get themselves into too much trouble financially with holding money back or payments back. They seem to do it straight up and above water. In Spain, it's a completely different story. In Italy, we've seen it before. It's a completely different story. And the truth will always come out, Phil.
But Ian, ignorance won't be an excuse. It's not going to save Neymar. whenever he goes up in front of a court and says, "Sorry, Your Honour, I wasn't aware there." I mean, it's ignorance is not going to get and you know, and I know when it comes to the public.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Joe Public, I'm making just so much money. I lost that extra few mil there, right? And so, I can understand. Look, I have a lot of sympathy for football players when it comes to a lot of things about the goldfish bowl they live in with a personal life and all that. But this looks like financial skullduggery to me. Right. Neymar is facing the serious trouble, but the thing is, there's no need for it because it's just greed. When you look at what Neymar was going to make in that transfer, when you look at what Neymar's father was going to make, I don't like third-party ownership, but the reality is third-party ownership kept Brazilian clubs alive because they were the ones that invested in the talent, and it doesn't always pay off. A lot of times they lose on players. They own 40% of his rights. So they had every right to expect to be paid appropriately, and so did Santos. Correct. So to me, I think, when you consider the numbers that are involved here, I think the ordinary person's a bit fed up with special cases and special exceptions being given to high-end people. Because if you and I fiddle, I don't know about you, you're high-end, and you're worth a few quid. But if someone like me swindles a few quid, you're going down for it. So no sympathy.
I think so too. I mean, you run the risk nowadays of prison sentences. You run the risk of being caught by the courts and the jurors, but they always seem to escape, Phil, right? What have we seen from Messi paying massive fines and escapes jail time? Neymar will probably be the same, escapes jail time. Uli Hoeneß seems to be the unfortunate one. He spent a bit of time behind bars or home prison sentence, whatever it was. But look what happened to him. He's just recently been re-voted president of Bayern Munich again. They always find a way to come back to the top.
Well, Uli had to serve his time. There was no chance of Uli doing an Andy Dufresne and climbing through the sewer pipe 10 rows of turd and with his big t-shirt. So Uli would have got stuck down there. But Uli took a few backhanders and got caught. But the other side of this for Barcelona is everything. Barcelona and Real Madrid are defined by each other, and it just so happens that Zinedine Zidane, credit where it's due, 86 points from 33 games, breaks Miguel Munoz's record as the best start ever under Real Madrid manager. Fantastic achievement because he came in behind Rafa Benitez, and I think there's a lesson to be learned here. Very important one. When you go from a guy like Benitez, who's very Fabio Capello-esque, very Van Gaal-esque, very detailed orientated, like every last detail, and they micromanage everything. When you go from a guy like that, you need to go to a guy that's an arm and a shoulder type manager. You can't go from the frying pan into the fire. And I think when Real Madrid were really smart in saying, look, Benitez is really unpopular, he's a disciplinarian, he manages every detail, and bring in Zidane, put the arm around the manager. He was in a brilliant situation. Now the players love this guy. He's got instant legend status, has the respect of players, and now can lift them. And I think how you go from those managers is really, really important. And Real Madrid they took a gamble. Florentino Perez had to gamble because of the situation he was in. Very unpopular Real Madrid fans, but it's worked.
It certainly has worked. And I think when you're looking at what Zinedine Zidane was before he took the hot seat, he was a youth coach, came in through the ranks, took his badges and did things the right way within the club. He waited patiently for his opportunity to shine. He knew he was good enough. We knew he was an exceptional player. But also an exceptional gentleman that people respected so much. And that's one of the reasons why I think that Real Madrid are getting positive results with him, especially Champions League success so quickly, is because he gets on so well with the players. The fans love him naturally because of who he was as a player. They're starting to love him now as a coach. His time will come, I'm sure, at the Bernabeu when he is booed and the white flags are flying around the stadium. But at this moment in time, people love him because of what he's producing inside of the stadium, on the field. It's exceptional football. I mean, to have such a point gap ahead of Barcelona right now is great to see for Real Madrid. To have Cristiano once again looking back to his best, scoring 10 goals already this season. I mean, that's quite incredible. Toni Kroos has been incredible for them. I love watching Real Madrid. I've always had a fondness for Real Madrid and the way that they play in this style. And Zinedine Zidane has brought that style back to me. He's brought that excitement back. I couldn't be more excited for this weekend, though, because Barcelona, just when you think they're dead and buried, they come back and they show everyone how good they are.
Big question the character for Barcelona in this game, because their attitude has been questioned by Gerard Piqué nonetheless. I want to ask you about Atletico Madrid, because I felt something broke in Simeone at the loss of last season's Champions League final. I looked at him and I thought, I just wonder if he's at that point where I'll never win this. I'll have it on reliable authority that Manchester United are going to buy Antoine Griezmann at the end of the season. I've already informed Griezmann that they're going to meet his buyout clause, and he will most likely leave Atletico Madrid at the end of the season. Forget about what he means to Manchester United. For Atletico Madrid, now look, they've a long track record of selling top strikers and them being okay, but if they start to lose people like Griezmann, Ian, and Simeone, who, depending on who you ask, whether he'll go or not at the end of the season, how crucial are they to Atletico Madrid's success?
Well, the important thing that you said there was Simeone. If Griezmann leaves, they can replace him. They've done it so many times, Atletico. The way that they do business is quite unbelievable. It's one of the best models in the game. They produce and always bring and buy the best next star and make them an even bigger star. We've seen it so many times before, with goalkeeper situation, with also the striker situation. In between, what happens is a bit of class. The players always seem to be there. They never seem to want to move on in that midfield area. They're happy to play there. Simeone is the key. He's the key to their success because he's so good in the way he plays, the way he gets his team to perform defensively, how well organised they are, how dangerous they are from set plays. Even though just recently I found out a stat that just blew my mind. They scored their first corner kick goal in La Liga, I think, in 9 months this weekend, which is just incredible because they're so dominant on set plays. I thank Kay Murray for that one on beIN Sports. She gave me that one. I think that Simeone is the key to their success because he's the one that basically makes everything tick. He's the one that's brought this club, this great club, back to their success. He's continuously produced results in the Champions League. He's there or thereabouts in La Liga, and I think that his focus mainly is Champions League and his desire to win it. Yes, I think he's a broken man with not having won it, having done so well in the Champions League to get to that final stage. But you know, we've talked about this previously before on his show. When his contract expires, I think he leaves, he walks away. He's refused to sign an extension to his contract. Inter Milan has seemed to be the place where he's going to go. They're investing money on a new coach next. I think it's Pioli who's just taken over at Inter right now, who's a stopgap coach. So Simeone seems to be stepping forward. For this club right now, they lose Simeone, that's their biggest loss. How do you replace someone who's had so much success, who has so much respect from their players, from their supporters, who's put their name back on the map, financially helped them because of their successes as well? You cannot replace that. Antoine Griezmann can be replaced. He's a good player. He's one of the world's best, but he can be replaced and they can spend money to bring someone else to do just as good, if not better. That's how they do business. Simeone, you just cannot replace.
But Ian, is Simeone the perfect marriage at Atletico Madrid? Because I get the feeling that Simeone will never repeat what he's done anywhere else. I think there's so many things that are unique to Simeone's relationship with Atletico Madrid that success in the way he manages won't translate into a different situation. He's got enormous respect at Atletico Madrid. But, for example, Simeone is a disciplinarian, right? He's a very, very, very strict guy. Can you imagine Simeone going to Arsenal, right, or another football club that?
So tell me what it is that you think that you believe he won't be a success anywhere else. Why?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. I think there's the dynamic of Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid being the paupers against the prince, right? Back us against the world mentality. Doesn't
Right.
have the resources, and he's also an ex-Atletico Madrid legend. He's got adulation from the stands. He's got adulation in the dressing room. His
Right.
players would go through a brick wall for him.
Yes.
Now, send him into Arsenal. We'll just use Arsenal as an example. And any football club. He doesn't have the same relationship with the fans. He's dealing with a whole different dynamic in terms of competition. It's not us against the world anymore. He now has a bit more resources to spend. And I'm sorry, but I don't see Giroud, Jack Wilshere, and those guys turning into Diego Godin, turning into Thiago, turning into players that would go through a brick wall for him. I just don't see that happening. I think he's got a brilliant balance in Atletico Madrid of players that he brought to the club, youth academy products, and he knows the Spanish league. English league, the requirements to win it are totally different. Italy, he knows. Inter Milan has such massive turnover every year. It's very difficult to get anything consistent there. And 3 bad results, you're booted. So I just don't see it translating anywhere else.
Why would he want to go to Italy? And this is my point on Italian football right now. I'm a big lover of the Italian game, but watching the game just disintegrate over the last 10 years has been really disappointing. The big players don't go there. There's not as much money involved. However, Inter do have big financial investment. Maybe they want to be a challenger in the European game. He will have the respect from the supporters because he played there. He certainly will be able to build his own team there. They already have a lot of talent. If you're going to an Arsenal situation, yes, I believe it's completely different. He will be tested to the best of his abilities to see how good he really is. But you mentioned one good point right there. At Atletico, he was able to build his own squad and bring in his own players. He'll be able to do the same at Arsenal. Of course, he's got a lot of players that are there who are bit part players or world-class players or squad players, whatever it may be. But he will change that club around and make it his own. Arsenal are, right at this moment in time, happy with the top 4 finish in the Premier League. They're happy with that. We talked about it in our last show. They're happy. They're nothing more. Not Simeone. He's not happy with settling for a top 4 place. He always chases after the top of the table. He went and did it with the La Liga title race. He went out and won it at Barcelona. He won it in his final game, getting the result that he needed. He managed to take Atletico from a club that was just going nowhere, were in financial problems, and then he personally managed to turn that whole club around, put the players on the field to believe, to play for him, for the club, and their successes. And look what happened. He won a title. He then goes to the Champions League final. I mean, if he can do it with Atletico Madrid, with limited resources, I believe that if he has finances behind him and support, he will be able to be a great success no matter where he goes. And let's not forget, Arsenal are not at the top of the table of the Premier League. Arsenal are happy with that top 4. So if he was to ever win the Premier League, think of a God that he would be in London.
Well, it's an important point because you're going to a big football club that's not going to put massive expectation on your shoulders to deliver a title in your first season. Arsenal fans will allow you time to build a club. I'm saying Arsenal because, look, Arsene Wenger's like Eamon Bundy. You can't get him out. He's one of them boys. Once you get in, you're not getting him out. He's been there a long time. Probably not likely to leave. I don't know. I think. I don't think Arsenal can win the league again under Arsene Wenger. I think that we've seen the best of him. But that's not. But like you say, that's not their agenda. It's finished top 4. They need somebody in that football club that is going to say that's not acceptable. But it's a hard thing to do, Ian, because I personally feel that Arsene Wenger has covered immensely for Stan Kroenke in his refusal. He'll give you one flashy sign in a season, but Arsenal, the way they recruit is atrocious. So major changes need to happen there. Anyway, my view is for Simeone to recreate what he's got at Atletico Madrid, he's going to. There's maybe only 1 or 2 clubs that he can do this at. Inter Milan are a massive football club, haven't had success for a long time, and don't give managers time
Yeah.
to put the roots in to build success. So we'll see what happens there. All right. But I want to go to Germany really quick because there's a couple of big stories there. RB
Always
Leipzig.
love going to the Bundesliga.
You're the Bundesliga man. RB Leipzig. So this is a football club. They get promoted last year. Spent some money. Stop me and correct me if I get anything wrong here, but they're loathed, right? In much the same way Hoffenheim are loathed, in that they're essentially a corporate creation of Red Bull, and it's all relatively new money. It's completely against German tradition, but credit where it's due. They're sitting top of the league again. Can they win the Bundesliga?
First and foremost, they can win the Bundesliga.
Would it be a Leicester?
It would be an unbelievable story, and it could be very similar to Leicester. I mean, Leicester proved it last year that anything's possible. Bayern Munich are not at the top of their game at this moment in time. Whether they take that back under a new coach, let's not forget. It takes time to build your squad and play the way you want. That's not happening at Bayern. RB Leipzig have managed to do it so quickly. They've only ever had success in their club. They've never tasted what it's like to finish second or third or fourth or fifth or whatever, lose games left, right and centre, go on a losing run. They've never tasted that because all they've had is success from the lower leagues in Germany, in Leipzig, which is the eastern part of Germany, which has never had a German big team go as far as they've done, as quickly as they've done right now. They've never had that success. It's been Dynamo Dresden with the last ones to do that in the 70s and 80s. Right, exactly. or made the Eastern Germans think a little differently. It's a great story. It's a brilliant story. I personally don't enjoy seeing how quickly success can bring it. We've seen it at Manchester City with the financial investment, also Chelsea very quickly. I like to see it grown and done so through the club itself, through the youth system, and up like United did back in the day. However, you have to sit back and admire the fact that they've gone out, spent money, Red Bull, bought a club. They've managed to invest in the German Bundesliga. And I go back to why. Why did Red Bull invest in the Bundesliga? Red Bull invested, and this is my theory, they want to win the Champions League. Red Bull see their own vision as to how on earth we can be biggest and best club in this game. How can we get Red Bull to the top of soccer? They want to win the Champions League. That's their goal. That's their end goal, 100%. They bought a club in Austria, Salzburg. Very successful club domestically, struggles in Europe because they don't have the best players in the European game. They can't attract the biggest players to Austria. Nobody wants to play there if you're a big name earning big money. Red Bull can pay them the money, but who wants to go and play in the Austrian league and then try to compete in the European game? No one. None of the best players do. So which league can they try to attract it? The Premier League wouldn't allow Red Bull to do what they're doing in the Bundesliga. That just simply wouldn't happen.
Why?
The Bundesliga somehow managed to make it happen. They could if they went and bought in the 9th tier of the English game and then built it all the way through. Red Bull wanted their name physically a part of it. They wanted their logo on the jerseys. That wouldn't happen in England so quickly, right? Yeah. So they managed to do it quickly in Germany because there's only 5 tiers to get to the top league. In England, it would take 9 tiers, maybe 10 tiers to get to the Premier League. Now, the next step of this is, which league can we attract some of the best players in the world? Where can we pay the highest salaries so that we can be competitive in the Champions League? The Bundesliga is a great example. They went to a city which is pretty. It's a nice city, even though it's in the eastern part of Germany, which is not as nice as the western part of Germany. Leipzig is a very nice city. They can attract some big names to Germany because it's the Bundesliga. The Bundesliga, you play against Bayern Munich, Borussia Dortmund, Schalke, big teams. Leverkusen, doesn't matter. They're big stars that have played in the Bundesliga in the past, maybe used it as a stepping stone, but now we're seeing some of the big names stay in the Bundesliga, Ribery, Robben, whatever it may be, because they are some of the best players and they're earning massive salaries. In Germany, you've got the Bundesliga. You can pay these players massive salaries. You can pay them what you want, which is great to see. Financial fair play, obviously, to keep yourself being able to buy players. So the end goal for RB Leipzig was to get to the Bundesliga and challenge Bayern Munich for the title. The fact that they're at the top of the table right now is because Bayern Munich are not at the best of their game. RB Leipzig are on an incredible run. Can they keep that going? I'm not so sure. But the Bundesliga is not the end goal for RB Leipzig or Red Bull. The end goal here, Phil, is that corporate Red Bull want to win the Champions League.
Right.
And that, to me, is interesting. If Red Bull came out and said that was the reason why they got involved in soccer, because I don't think it's business related. I think this is just down to putting Red Bull at the top of the game.
But isn't
How
that business
quickly
related?
can they do it? It is at the end of the day because Red Bull is going to be at the top. But I'm thinking more of like Bundesliga, like domestically. They don't really care about the Bundesliga. They don't really care about the league. They want to be the biggest name in the European game. They want to be better than Chelsea. They want to be better than United, Juventus, Dortmund, Bayern, whoever it may be, PSG. They want their name right as the top, holding that trophy. Could you imagine it? Red Bull wanted to make that happen, and it looks like it's working.
All right, so RB Leipzig are higher, they're higher than an East German weightlifter.
That was a lot there. I need to take a drink now.
So they're higher than an East German weightlifter right now. Let me ask you about the team below them because Mr. Ancelotti, you know, it was funny. I was on Twitter on Sunday about some United fans moaning about Mourinho and who would you want in his place, of course, right? And if not him, who? And of course, Ancelotti came up. At, I don't know, maybe it's just lazy, but maybe you haven't seen what's going on with Ancelotti in the Bundesliga because, all right, they won at the weekend against Bayer Leverkusen, good win for them. But
lucky win.
They were shocking in the Champions League. Brutal away from home against what's that team?
Rostov, yeah.
And 3-2 against Rostov. Some lovely goals from Rostov.
Yeah.
But you know, what is the problem that Ancelotti's having? Because Ancelotti knew he was getting that job for 6 months prior to Guardiola leaving. So he had plenty of time to think about it, plenty of time to prepare. And I accept that following Guardiola isn't the easiest thing in the world to do. What's the problem that Ancelotti's having and continuing Bayern Munich's high level?
I think first and foremost, Bayern really didn't want to lose Pep Guardiola, but also were happy to push him out the door because they wanted to change and go back to an old gym mentality, different style. Pep Guardiola was bigger than the club trying to be, or his name was becoming bigger than the club. Yeah. So they were happy to see that Manchester City wanted him, and Pep Guardiola, I'm sure, was happy to go to the Premier League and test his game there. He was successful domestically. Obviously, we've seen what happened in the European game. There was no success for Bayern Munich under Pep Guardiola. So who was going to replace that? Which name was big enough? Which coach had the experience? Which coach could have brought them that type of success? Or that type of style, that type of mentality? Who would be a man that they know would want to go to a different way than what Pep Guardiola did, a different style of playing, listen to the directors and board of directors and the president a little bit more, because Pep Guardiola didn't want to do that. It seems to be Ancelotti was the man for them to do that.
Let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. They say Guardiola was successful because of his 3 Bundesliga titles. Sure. If, say, Ancelotti finished second in the Bundesliga and won the Champions League, is that more successful than Guardiola? How would Bayern Munich define that?
Bayern Munich will not be happy unless they win the Champions League and win the Bundesliga title. Simple as that. They don't go to be satisfied for the Champions League trophy and forget about domestic football. That's not the way they do business, because week in and week out, Bayern want to win games and be the best. Going back to your earlier question, Ancelotti is still trying to build a team and play his own way, but this team has no identity right now. The formation they play, the style that they play, the players look unhappy. They're not confident in front of goal. I mean, Thomas Müller is a great example of that. He hasn't scored a Bundesliga goal so far this season. He got 20 last year. There's no confidence with this kid. Lewandowski's struggling. He's really been in a rout where he's not necessarily finding his finishing touch. That's been a real disappointment for them, even though he's got 7 goals on the campaign. Creativity on the wings. We've seen Douglas Costa last year, exceptional, going up and down the wings, putting crosses in, scoring goals. Franck Ribéry and Robin on the other side, or Kingsley Coman it was last season when those two were injured, was exceptional. Where are they now? Douglas Costa was injured, comes back into the team, and he's not confident. He doesn't want to run at players, can't find his finishing touch. Ribery and Robin are still going through their situations where they're getting older and having a lot of injuries to deal with, not having any effect in the game when they come on. Kingsley Coman can't even get a game now. I see big problems for Bayern Munich, and this seems to be the right stage right now for a team like Leipzig to come through and fulfill a story which would be magical.
Renato Sanchez, rumours he could be a year older than Bobby Charlton.
It's quite unbelievable. Again, he came on at the weekend and had no effect. I mean, I don't see why the price tag was so high on this kid. And many people were saying his price tag was quite low. And I just failed to see any reason as to why he would be a good fit for Bayern Munich. But again, he's coming in at a very turbulent time for the club because they've got a new coach. They're replacing Pep Guardiola. And things are not necessarily rosy there. And their new president, Uli Hoeneß, who was just voted in by 98% of the votes, again, as president, said that he duly noted that the club is not in the situation he wants them to be in, and they're certainly not playing the way he wants them to be. And he seems to be the right man to put the ship right.
And I would like to see the other 2% that didn't vote for him. I'll help carry your coffin, boys. All right. Let's English Premier League. Let's finish there.
Yep.
The story, of course, well, there's multiple stories, but we'll start with Philippe Coutinho.
Yeah.
Because I was talking to Ray Wilkins about him earlier, and when Kevin De Bruyne got injured last season for Man City, essentially finished their title challenge.
Yep.
Coutinho, you can go through almost every team in the league and pick out one player that you cannot replace. Philippe Coutinho is so unique to Liverpool. It's so good. It's so crucial to their creativity and so important to how they play as a team. He is. When you play Liverpool, he's the one player that really worries you because he can do everything.
Right.
How do they change? I would like to believe Klopp has got a plan B in his head that if Coutinho gets injured, this is what we'll do. Do they have the tactical diversity to be able to adjust and to accommodate Coutinho's loss and say, okay, we'll still be as dangerous?
I think it's a great question because Coutinho has really found his form at Liverpool. Before that, we seen a lost player at Inter Milan. He was sort of a bit part player. We knew he had mega talent, but just wasn't showing it consistently. Since he arrived in the Premier League, I mean, I seen a completely different player. Such full of confidence, one who wanted to run at players, and one who really stole the show in pretty much every match he's played in. I think a talent like that is impossible to replace. When he's on form, he's confident. He is a superb international player. He is a superb player in the European game for Liverpool. And what we're seeing right now in the Premier League is a world-class Coutinho. How do you replace world-class? You can't. I don't really their squad. I was listening to the guys on my drive home talk sport just last week or the weekend after. They were all worried about the injury as to the extent of how long he would be out. And I think it's 5 or 6 weeks now he's going to be missing through this injury.
Yeah, 5 or 6 weeks.
5 or 6 weeks, yeah, which is not bad.
Too bad.
Right? But 5 or 6 weeks can win or lose you the Premier League title, especially when you're coming into the most busiest period in the Premier League. There's a lot of games now.
Right. This is the 5 or 6 weeks you don't want to get a player injured. If you want to miss 5 or 6 weeks, start a season, not now.
Yes.
Let me ask you about Klopp because, look, I'm in there fun, but I have to say, I find Klopp incredibly captivating. He's very charismatic. He's very pragmatic. I love his responses to questions. He's a guy I can easily see why Liverpool players buy into what he's saying. You know, Brendan Rodgers, fellow countryman and all that there, but Brendan Rodgers was, as fake as one of them Chinese toys you get in the dollar store, right? There was always a bit of a dodgy aroma to him. Something just wasn't quite right that you wouldn't put in your mouth. He was just something. There was something. He felt like a salesman to me. He felt like, one of them motivational speakers, right?
Right.
But Klopp just seems like this guy that doesn't take things. He's quintessentially German. Very, very efficient.
He just looks
charismatic, charismatic, doesn't over dramatize things, and
Right.
he just he is a guy I have to say I admire from a distance and think, you know what, he's the real deal. I think Liverpool's done a fantastic job getting him.
Yes, and so would any club because he is the real deal.
Yeah,
You know, Jurgen Klopp has managed to take again a Borussia Dortmund. I've talked about this before with previous clubs that we were talking about, Atletico Madrid and Simeone,
yeah,
raising the club back to another
yeah.
level. He did that at Borussia Dortmund. Borussia Dortmund were mid-table team in the Bundesliga when Jurgen Klopp took over, and he managed to attract the best players because of his style and his energy. What he was like as a player was full of energy, full of passion, and that's the same guy you see on the sidelines. The German media loved Jurgen Klopp for exactly what you just said. He's brutally honest. He tells you as it is. He doesn't BS. He doesn't try to go a roundabout way of answering questions. He tells you straight as it is. And you can imagine if he's telling the media that, what he's telling his players. He's straight up. He's a player's coach. And that's the way he coaches his game on the training ground as well.
I think he improves players as well. I think if
Sure.
you look at a Jurgen Klopp team, you're not going to find too many players playing beneath themselves. You're not going.
Right.
You know, United are littered with this, where you're like, Jesus, there's so many players who just aren't playing anywhere near their potential. There's question marks about there's desire. There's question marks about them as players. But with
Right.
Klopp, it seems like, you know, he's one of those managers that gets his players to believe they're Ballon d'Or winners, that
Right.
they can do anything. And I think that a great coach will get the best out of what he has and beyond. And that
Yeah.
goes back to what we were saying about Simeone, about players going through a brick wall for their manager because they
Right.
believe him and will give you that 105%.
Yeah, I mean, it's so important to make sure that when you have a coach like Jurgen Klopp coming in, the situation is right for him. It was almost
Yeah.
set up perfectly
Yeah, perfect club.
for Jurgen Klopp to be successful because the club was trending in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Premier League started to see other clubs challenging at the top of the table. There's not one club that is an out-and-out winner year in and year out for the Premier League title. So there's a great opportunity there for Liverpool to go on and be successful once again domestically. And in Europe, as you've seen last year, you know, making it to the final, it was great to see. Jurgen Klopp is the type of guy that needs to have good people around him. And I think I'm looking up the name now. Is it Buvac, who's his assistant? Buvac? I can't remember his name.
Oh, yeah, I forget his name.
He's been with him
Apologies.
everywhere, from
Yeah.
Mainz all the way through Dortmund, all the way through. Now, the rumor has it that this guy is tactically
Yeah,
a
that's what I've heard.
genius,
Yeah.
and he is fantastic with the players. And the type of aura you get from this guy is the same as what you get from Jurgen Klopp. Now, Jurgen Klopp in front of the cameras, in front of the media, in front of the newspaper is phenomenal. He's a great man to have because he speaks well, he's brutally honest, and he says it as it is, which is what you want. Behind the scenes, him and his coaching staff have got something special going on. It's not just Jurgen Klopp. He's getting all the plaudits for it, and reason. And I would say it's exactly the way it should be. But his coaching staff and what's going on behind the scenes, he looks after every one of those individually because he treats them all like family, same as his players. He's building his squad, and he is making Liverpool a giant once again because of the person he is, because of the coach he is, because of the people he has around him, and because of the squad that he's assembled. You have to be honest with yourself, Phil. When you look at that Liverpool squad, 10 years ago, that Liverpool squad wouldn't get in the top floor. It just wouldn't. I don't believe so. Right now,
10
at this
years
moment in
ago.
time, in the Premier League,
Yes.
there's no out-and-out winner of the Premier League. Anyone can win it. If
Yes.
you manage to get your team believing
That's
they're
a great
better than
point.
what they actually are, giving them confidence, making them better players, as you just mentioned, he's doing that at Liverpool. He's making these players who were good Premier League players, brilliant Premier League players. And this is a great Liverpool team. I think they can win the title this year. I really believe that.
You know, okay. So the Premier League is right now a league where nothing's won and lost yet. Anybody
Yeah.
that puts a run together will win the league. Anybody.
Yeah.
Liverpool will not have the same psychological hang-ups that Arsenal will have, for example. I would,
Right.
if Liverpool and Arsenal are neck and neck for the league with 4 or 5 games to go, I'd put my money on Liverpool. Because
Right.
I think that Arsenal or a football club will have massive psychological issues, and we've done this to death. But Liverpool, for example, I despite not having won the league since 1990, I believe it was, in 1990, Leeds won it 91. they haven't won it since then. I think it's a football club that I I wouldn't say they're great. They're great to watch. I still think defensively there's major question marks over them defensively, and I still feel if they played top teams in Europe, they get picked apart. But are they capable of collecting the most points out of 38 games of the Premier League season? Absolutely. That league is wide open. They're to be won, as Leicester showed last season.
Yes.
So,
let me ask you a question before you move on.
Yes.
You just talked about Arsenal and having mental issues.
Yeah.
On paper, could you agree that Arsenal have a better squad of individual players than what Liverpool have?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. So if you have that Arsenal squad and you put Jurgen Klopp as head coach of that squad and gave him 2 years, do you think that he would manage to turn that club around and win the title? Or do you think
I do. Because I do think that. I think that Klopp would get rid of the players. Look, there's a certain part of a player's development that comes down to the replication. So players have immense talent. That's what gets you to that level. And then the final stage of your development is all about you. It's all about you as a player, you as a human being, how badly you want to make that next step. Do you want to be a world-class footballer that is a serial winner, or are you happy with putting in one good performance and 4, picking up 200 grand a week? And that, that's the question Mourinho's asking of his players right now. Yeah. That is a question that Klopp, if you don't give him the answer, he'll answer the question for you. So for me, that is a question that was Giroud. Giroud will score 20 goals a season, but 10 of them will be in 2 games, right? And it's deceiving. You're like, he's a 20 goal a season striker. No, he's not, because he will consistently go missing in the big games where you really need a goal. Now, look, he scored against United 2 weeks ago, but I would never bank on Giroud in a big game. So I think those are the players that Arsenal are missing, and I think Klopp would find them, or he'd somehow get the players that he has to believe that they're good enough. So,
that's what he's doing at Liverpool, right? He's managing to attract the players that he knows that can actually go on and win domestically. Now, Liverpool's a completely different story from most clubs in Europe, because I think what they're chasing is a Premier League title.
Absolutely.
I'm not so sure that their focus is on Champions League or Europa League. Their focus is on winning a domestic trophy and making the people of Liverpool, who are fantastic fans,
they are
so happy again to support their club, because they deserve it. They almost won it a couple of years ago, and probably should have won it had they not slipped up. Literally, it would have been great to see it happen back then, because it was a really close race. But this time around, I'm not convinced that Conte's got Chelsea all the way through the season playing like this, or that people don't figure that system out, or people don't figure Conte out. I've seen it with Juve. They dominated the Italian game under Conte and that formation. Nobody could compete with them. Premier League's a different animal, man. Anyone can win that league.
Ian, he failed in Europe with that Juve team, and whenever Juve come up against better, consistent quality, they were able to figure it out. Right. Now, you don't have the same competitive balance in Italy. When you've got a league where Parma can't get paid, there's more competitive balance in England. But what I would say is Juventus are as good, if not better, than any Premier League team, right? Right. But I think that Chelsea team, look, the 7 wins on the trot, Conte's done superb. Look at the game at the weekend; they're behind. They come from behind to win the game. A question that gets asked a lot. And I also mentioned this to Ray Wilkins, is about leaders. And people talk about leaders today. Our image of a leader, Ian, is the Roy Keane figure, right? The guy that screams, the guy that gets everybody by the scruff and grabs the game. 2 things. First of all, society very rarely produces that personality anymore. Secondly, young players don't respond to that anymore. Right?
Correct.
You can't scream at young players anymore. It's not going to work. Same with managers. So now a modern leader for me is an Eden Hazard. Is a guy that gets the ball, that when you're in a game and you're 0-0 and you need a flash of genius, you need someone to grab a game by the scruff, you need someone to do something that nobody else can do to lift everybody. Eden Hazard gets a ball, skips past 2 players, puts one in the top corner. That's how you lead today. That is a modern leader. Chelsea have that in Hazard, and Conte's getting the best out of him by letting him off a leash. So I don't think it's a concern about John Terry leaving. So for me, I think I have to give him huge credit because he's come to the Premier League, not spoken the language, adjusting, and was under enormous pressure right away, and he's answered those questions.
I think the question on the leadership is a great point to bring up because it has changed. Players in particular don't respond to the shouting and the bawling and the ooh-ah of what football used to be. But look at what he had at Juventus, the leaders that he had there. Leonardo Bonucci was, in my opinion, an absolute leader because he was a team guy. Not because he was the one who was aggressively shouting at players and trying to motivate them through verbal abuse. Chiellini, another one. Their attitude on the training ground and attitude on a 90-minute game at home and away from home really pushed all the players around them to be better. Because if these guys are doing it and these guys are running the show defensively, they're basically giving the rest of the team an opportunity to go and win the game. Their mental attitude, their physical approach to the game, the way they push their teammates, not aggressive or verbally aggressive, it's just by their style. That's what's different about the game. The game is a younger man's game now. It's not a 28 to 31-year-old game. It's now a 22 to 28-year-old game where that middle generation needs confidence. They need to be feel belief from their own teammates and from their head coach, and then you can make anything happen. And you can make world-class players even better, like an Eden Hazard, a guy who suffered with confidence last season before he was exceptional. Now what we're seeing again is another world-class talent. So great example as to what Conte can do. He brings confidence to people. He pushes players to be better than what they are. He also recognises the player. Moses has come back into the team and question marks as to why on earth he was even out. The club is beyond him. That's what's great about the Premier League, man. There's so many great stories, Phil.
We'll finish up with Jose. I have a lot to say on this, but I'll spare everybody the next 4 weeks because this is how long I go on for it. Jose Mourinho is the right man for Manchester United. He was the right pick. Go back to when they picked him, what was available. Here's where United have got this wrong. They, first of all, gave him the job 6 months too late. He should have got the job last January when Van Gaal should have clearly been sacked. Then Mourinho would be in exactly the same situation Jurgen Klopp's in right now.
Yep.
Should have sacked Van Gaal then. Mourinho would have had 6 months to evaluate that squad and get the players out that he badly needs to get out. United's recruitment over the last 2 years has been a disgrace. I'm going to try to give some perspective on this. You must understand that United is a football club. When you want to get to the root of this problem, the real root of this problem goes back to two major transitions: Ferguson's transition and Ed Woodward's transition into that job. United, as a football club, in the way they recruit, are still stuck in an old model where the manager makes all the decisions. Chelsea, because they rotate through managers so much, don't stand still when they sack a manager. They go out and they buy, right? All top clubs do this. Bayern Munich go out and they buy. United, because they will only... there's no such thing as an Ed Woodward signing, right? No, at United, the only person that makes decisions on who comes into a football club is the manager. They've resisted bringing in a director of football to do this. So when they knew they were sacking Moyes, Vidic, Ferdinand and Evra was allowed to leave the club. Then they had to wait on Van Gaal coming in, which was after a World Cup, which meant no replacements were signed. The whole bedrock of that back four was allowed to leave with no replacements. In comes Van Gaal. Van Gaal is going, wait a minute, you have no scouting network? If you go back to Moyes didn't trust United scouting either. He was the one that was away doing all the scouting. Van Gaal was, wait a minute, I've been working at Bayern Munich. I've been working at the top football clubs around the world. I've been an international manager. Do you know how long it's been since I've intimately scouted players? Clubs do that. So, Dilly Blind, I think I know him. Rojo, he's sort of good. He had a good World Cup. That's what you got. You got players that he knew. Di Maria. Anybody knew what Di Maria brought. Didn't require scouting. But not major work was done on these signings. United just went out, scattergun approach, and signed players really early. Nah, they're stuck with these guys on big money. Can't get rid of them. And the Glazers are like, well, wait a minute here. So Mourinho for January is targeted 2 defenders. And in the summer they want to bring in another right back. But the job that he has on his hands at United is so massive and so big. If they sack him or he was to leave, which they won't sack him if he was to leave, this situation will repeat and repeat and repeat. No one is coming in and fixing United inside 4 months with what needs to be done.
It's a mess at this moment in time.
It's
been a mess since Fergie left, and it probably was beginning to be a mess before Fergie left. You know, it started to appear that the talent level, even with the championship winning team that Fergie left with, wasn't quite good enough to see the next 5 years out. And trying to replace Fergie himself was always going to be difficult. It's because of what the work was going on behind the scenes with no scouting system or international scouting or director of football, whatever it may be. The mess they had with Moyes didn't help them. Just the wrong man in that situation didn't work out for them. Signed some bad players. And it's been a continuous trend since then. Mourinho right now is in a situation where he's been landed with these players from Louis van Gaal, like you mentioned, and David Moyes, Fellaini, all these guys. I mean, they've been there for 3 or 4 years now. And the situation I see with Manchester United is not an easy fix, which is why I think that Mourinho will take his time and he will be giving some time to make this right. It's not going to happen that if this year United don't finish in a Champions League spot that they fire him next year. That's just not going to happen. United need to consistently stand by Mourinho and give him 2 or 3 years to steady the ship, to let him implement his own ideas, to get his backroom staff, the scouting system, everything like that, all planned in perfect condition so that he knows that when the next transfer window comes around, either in this winter or next summer where we probably really spend some money, that they can sign the right players. But even then, he's got to get rid of players before he brings players through the door. There's too many players at that club on big salaries who are worth a lot of money that are not playing great football right now. So it's a big job. And like you mentioned, you text me at the weekend and you said straight out, this is a massive job for Mourinho. And this is going to be a real test for Mourinho because he's probably never been in this situation before where he is the man that everyone's looking to fix this giant club. He's the one. His responsibility. If he messes this up, United could be a mid-table team in the Premier League for a long time. But I think he gets it right, and I think that Manchester United stand by Mourinho until he does.
United will definitely stand by him. But here's my question mark about Mourinho. Whether his temperament will allow him. This guy is a serial winner, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he cannot stand anything other than winning. You can see when United don't win, it tears him apart, right?
Yeah.
And I think if I have a criticism of Mourinho, it is that he needs to show more composure on the sideline. Of course, it's hurting him, right? But you know, it needs to show that he has the temperament to deal with the natural ebb and flow that's going to come with writing this massive organisation. United have so many external influences in. They've got the marketing department, which are now prioritising big name signings because of the payoff.
Sure.
Right? United have only bought at the top of the market for the last 2 years. And even then they haven't done it well. So the job that he has on his hands is so big. How many players could you say, people say Mourinho doesn't know his best 11. I'd say he doesn't know his best 3 or 4. How many players in that United team could you say guaranteed starter every week? De Gea, right? Bailly if he's fit, but not because he's been very good, but not because he's an absolute stalwart. Midfield, Pogba, because you're waiting on him again for the same reason that Bailly. Ibrahimovic, for lack of a better option. Outside of that, nobody.
Right.
That's 4 players. So
they're essentially going to have to build that squad again. They're going to have to give confidence to a lot of the players that are there and try and bring that back. Mourinho needs to be very careful in the way that he handles with a lot of these players because there's a lot of young players there as well. Martial's a great example. He's a confidence player. Give him confidence. He can be a phenomenal player. They do have to grow up, and they have to grow up quickly. I still think that we will see the best of Pogba in the Premier League. I still think we'll see the best of Martial in the Premier League. Bailly is a great example as to a player who's come from a lower level team, even though whatever the league, I'm not even going to criticize the league, but a lower level team, and he's done an exceptional job, and he's surprised a few people, which is why everyone says he's the one you've got to put in your starting 11. He's good. He's very good. He can be brilliant, and he will be brilliant. Eventually, Mourinho will get the best of him. But you're right that there really isn't too many outside of that you would say is a rock cold start for your top 3 or 4 players for Man United. He certainly doesn't have a top 11. There's no way in my mind that I believe that he sits there on a training ground and knows his first 11 and get the second 11. That just doesn't happen. These players are training week in and week out. They're trying to consistently find their performances so they stay in the team.
Yeah, but see, that's the point. It's up to the players to show Mourinho what his best 11 is. Before we finish on this, Martial is a much more talented footballer than Jesse Lingard.
Right.
Much more naturally talented player.
Exciting.
But Jesse Lingard is getting in that team because when he plays, he shows desire. He scores goals. He makes a difference. He impacts the game. He doesn't sit in the sideline, I sort of want to get involved, which is a la Luke Shaw. And you have to make sure that attitude is not tolerated so that it doesn't develop. And so, so support him 100%. This is going to be bumpy for United fans for a while, but he's definitely, for me, the right man. And
let me ask you this, Phil, before you go. Where do United finish in the Premier League this season, in your opinion?
Idea. It goes back to what we were saying earlier, Ian. If United were to find form, they could finish in the top 4 easily. Right. Or they could finish mid-table easily. I honestly don't know. So much is going to depend on what gets done in January, and so much is going to depend on if key players can find consistency. But where they finish, no idea. But if United finish in the top 4, it's been a successful season.
I'm with you. I agree with you. And it will take some time, but I'm pretty sure, I know you've got a big following of Manchester United faithful out there. It will take some time, but they'll certainly get back to being the best in the Premier League.
Before we go in, big announcement. Nike are going to partner with BTP.
Yeah, it's great to see. Obviously, Nike coming on board, providing us with some gear as well, which is nice. The BTP gear will be out there for all of our members that everyone will start to see very soon with some of the shows that we've got planned coming up. They'll all be wearing it and representing it. But yeah, it's great. I've had a partnership with Nike for a while since I was a player. I mean, my whole career I wore Nike. They're a great partnership to have. Obviously, this is just the beginning of something that we hope will be very special going forward as well. So Nike is always great to have as a friend and as a partner going forward. So we're very excited about what we're trying to build here, and to have them on board and providing us first and foremost with some gear is fantastic. But there's no limit as to what can end up with Nike, that's for sure.
Folks, don't forget, keep hitting us up on Twitter, Facebook, all the other outlets where you can get in touch with myself, Ian, the show. Keep the comments coming. Thanks for downloads. This will be on Kissway app, of course, as always. You can catch it on YouTube and SoundCloud also for the audio file. Keep the comments coming. Thanks for downloading, folks, and we look forward to bringing you more of these in the coming weeks. Ian, all the best, mate.
Take care.
Cheers, pal.